Welcome to Block and Build, a podcast from Convergence Magazine. I'm your host and the publisher of Convergence, Caden Mock. On this show, we're building a roadmap for the movement that's working to block the impacts of rising authoritarianism while building the strength and resilience of the broad front that we need to lead. This week on the show, I'm joined by two organizers with the Tabletop Solidarity Committee, Gabor Fu and Sam Ledoux. TSC has spent the last few years providing volunteer support to union bargaining efforts at their favorite tabletop game stores in New York City. The workers successfully unionized in 2023, and a contract was signed mid-year last year. But as this work continues, Gabor and Sam join us to tell the story of how they got there with community and fan support, showing how our hobbies, passions, and side projects can be fertile ground for organizing new people into social movements. But first, these headlines. Kristi Noem is out as head of the Department of Homeland Security. Of course, she's being replaced by yet another true believer, Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. And as much as I enjoy a little schadenfreude from time to time, this just feels like a lineup shuffling to create the veneer of accountability. And don't worry too much about Kristi. She's got another administration job as special envoy to the Shield of the Americas initiative, which is, I guess, the next stage in supposedly fighting drug trafficking. The Trump administration wants to double the detention capacity of DHS and ICE, but basically nobody wants these things in their backyards. In King County, Washington State, they placed a moratorium on new detention facilities last week, following similar plans in Baltimore County, Kansas City, and more. Pennsylvania's Department of Environmental Protection issued a temporary order preventing two proposed ICE detention centers from connecting to local sewer and water systems. This has become a bipartisan effort. Governor Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire also recently celebrated the cancellation of a new local ICE facility after public outcry. I think it needs to be said, we have an opportunity here to build with people from a variety of political leanings and backgrounds against what this government is doing. There are both public government targets to pressure, like city and county governments and even some state governments, to get them to pass moratoriums on new DHS facilities, and also private targets to pressure, like companies who might lease or sell properties to stop these concentration camps from being built. All of this is to say that in spite of ICE and DHS detention and violence falling from the headlines recently in favor of manufacturing consent for an illegal war in Iran, they are still pushing forward with their racist deportation programs around the nation. Communities across the country are still diligently organizing to train and prepare concerned community members for if and when they're chosen as the next target of Stephen Miller's Eye of Sauron. Last week on the show, we covered some great organizing efforts by folks in Minneapolis during this winter's Operation Metro Surge, and I really recommend that episode if you're looking for a starting point.
Hey everybody, this is Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party. I read and give to Convergence because it has become a home for me to engage in critical analysis, find practical advice for organizing and strategy, and inspiration in the belief that a better world is not only possible, we can build it.
To make either a one-time donation or become a sustaining member, visit convergencemag.com/donate. You can find a direct link in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
Tabletop games like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, and many more have long been a natural community building space for those of us who felt a little culturally marginalized. But as fandom has expanded, so has the ability of neoliberal capital to commodify and profit from just about any niche nerd interest you can think of. A massive tabletop industry has grown, which requires a growing customer-facing workforce. In the past decade, both Magic and D&D have come under ownership and begun generating massive profits for the multi-billion-dollar toy and entertainment publisher Hasbro. A cottage industry of tabletop game stores to support these games, products, and their fans has also risen. But these businesses are more than just stores. They're community spaces where new and dedicated players can find play space, social support, and so much more. This necessitates a staff that's skilled in customer service, deep game knowledge, and even sometimes childcare for school students who are attending their aftercare programs. As these businesses grow, workers at a collection of game stores in New York City unionized as the Tabletop Workers United in 2023. Throughout their long journey to a contract last spring, they were supported by a partner organization of volunteers known as the Tabletop Solidarity Committee, a group of dedicated customers who love the stores and their workers as community resources and want to see the employees who run the spaces supported by their employers. I'm joined this week by two members of the Tabletop Solidarity Committee out of New York City, Gabor Fu and Sam Ledoux. They'll tell the story of how their organizing supported the workers' journey to a contract and why these game stores are such valuable community and organizing spaces. Take a listen. Today, I'm joined by two organizers who helped bring the Tabletop Solidarity Committee to life. Gabor, first of all, thank you so much for making the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Kaden, for having me. Great to be here.
Definitely. And Sam, thanks for joining us as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be included also.
Awesome. Well, let's start with a little background. I've spent countless hours at my local game stores playing with my friends. Many of our listeners might not be familiar with the role that these kinds of stores play in gaming communities. So you could just talk a little bit about both the role that these stores play in general and also the specific stores in New York City that were unionized and that you worked to support the bargaining process at. Sam, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. For a lot of tabletop games, board games, card games, role-playing games as well. I think it's hard to, because for these games you need kind of a lot of space. You need table space. You need a common meeting area, and I think for a lot of people it's hard to find that. Otherwise, you have to host at your house, things like that. You might not have all these games and pieces available to you. So these game stores kind of provide a space for you to meet up with people, meet new people, play card games, board games, whatever you're interested in. And then a lot of times they have food and drink available for purchase too.
Yeah, 100% agree. If you're interested in buying a board game, where do you go? You probably go to the board game store, if not a big box store like Target or something. You're going to get a better selection, people who actually know what they're talking about. If you go to a local game store in general, great to support a local store instead of a huge corporation, of course. And then in New York, there are a couple of game stores that have been around for a really long time. The Brooklyn Strategist and the Uncommons have both been open since the mid-aughts, mid 2000s, and they run after school programming. They are board game cafes, like Sam was describing. You can come and sample from a huge library of games, so you don't have to commit to buying a $80 game before you know what it's like. And then the game store that I went to growing up was also a comic book store. I think these nerd fandoms often have a lot of overlap too. And so these two game stores each have distinct owners, but then for the campaign that we were helping volunteer for, they also, with a third person who was not involved by the time we started helping with the union effort, they co-founded 3 more locations. So by the time we got involved, there were 5 total stores in New York City across Manhattan and Brooklyn, with 2 owners, about 100 something employees, almost all of them working front of house, a mix of front of house, doing food service, helping with games, helping with after school. Some people had slightly more focused roles, like being a dungeon master or a game master for role-playing games, stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like the workers at these stores are people who actually do have a lot of really specialized knowledge, like you were implying, Gabor, that some of them are cafe workers in a way that I think would be recognized as sort of service workers, but there's a lot of, specialized knowledge, specialized skills that also go into the job of working at these types of establishments.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anybody who's tried to learn a really complicated board game and is flipping through a 30-page manual and really wish that they had somebody there to help teach them how the rules work knows what this is like and why these people actually do spend some amount of their time learning the rules of these games, why they're going to conventions to see what new games are hot and stuff. I mean, this is a very popular, maybe not even a niche anymore, a pretty big cultural part of the pie. People really love to play games, especially in real life with their friends. Yeah.
And on top of that, certain games like Magic the Gathering, you need a judge. And, these are stores running official events. A judge who understands the rules fully is required for that. Famously, the game Magic the Gathering is incredibly complex. So, you need someone that's going to help with any rules, and often there's prizes on the line. So, you need someone who really knows their stuff. And not to mention the after school program Gabor was talking about, right? These are they had Dungeons and Dragons, after school program where they would play, run games with kids when they finish school. And, of course, that's going to involve having to take care of kids. So that's another way they had a lot of specialized knowledge.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is interesting is like looking back at the Tabletop Workers United like unionization drive, how much mainstream media coverage there was that was like sort of like trivializing this work though, because it's like I don't know, it's like it is like hobby related, and so it feels like squishier or like it's just fun. But I think that when I was looking at that stuff preparing for this interview, I was also thinking about the ways that like for years people talked about how like video game workers didn't need unions because they're like basically like you're making games, what's the big deal, you're living the dream, and it's like actually the labor conditions are sort of miserable in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. Like correct on all counts. It's just like everybody who listens to this podcast has probably been to a like cafe where the workers are not getting treated well, and it's like just because the clientele you serve happens to like come from a slightly different, you know, like social like background, or like they want to do this with their free time instead of like grind setting with like like a cafe worker who serves like people in FIDI in New York like deserves just as much protections as a person who serves coffee to people who play games. Like it's not about like who's consuming the I mean, it is about that, of course, but it's also just like these workers deserve protections. Like, they're workers. Like, are you going to leave workers out of the conversation if we're trying to win? Like, that's not how you win big, right? So, yeah.
Totally. Well, let's talk a little bit about the origin of Tabletop Workers United, the union that you are all organizing on the sort of consumer side to support. You talked about there's this sort of like set of stores that had the same owners or co-owners, but what was sort of the like inciting moment for these workers to want to get organized and to form a union?
I think at Hex and Company, which is there are three locations for that one, and that's the one that's co-owned by these two people. I think like the conditions were just getting like remaining bad for all of the classic reasons that like work with customers, like retail work can be really challenging and difficult with poor management, absent managers. These are things that happened all across the whole campaign, but like not repairing the AC in like a tiny space in New York when it's really hot in the summer, or like not like giving people time to actually get trained, no pay transparency, no transparency to raises and to getting promoted, to hiring people from inside the store rather than like a new manager who's never worked there before. All of these things are like classic things that anybody who's like organized in labor has heard of before. So these were the inciting incidents at Hex and Company. They were organizing with the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, which is a part of DSA, EWOC, and then they marched on the bus, and they also like spoke to the workers at these other locations, like from the same owners, and decided to organize together, because if there's 100 workers instead of 20 workers, it's just going to be a lot stronger.
And what has the union been able to win for its members in terms of like workplace condition improvements, protection, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at things, but there's so much. That was one that Sam, I'm sure, will be able to help fill in. Like the March on the Boss and the like election was won in mid to late 2023. I got involved in December of 2023, and then by May of 2025, the workers won their first contract. It was great, raises across the board over the coming few years, and so many like non-economic bargaining things about raises, all the things that we just talked about.
Awesome.
Raises, like transparency on performance, commitment to repairs, better management, all these things. I mean, yeah, like these managers are generally pretty absent from the business. The owners let the managers like sort of do everything, but if you're not there, a bunch of questions just are not getting answered all the time. Like these are the kinds of things that the contract was fighting for, on top of all the economic stuff. One thing that I was really like proud that we won was giving game masters for tabletop role playing games dedicated time to like go and learn new rules if the store wanted to have those games on offer. It's like you have to pay people to be trained on like this skill that they need to have in order to offer the thing that you want to offer as a business owner.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I feel like I have a couple friends who are Magic judges, and so I know about the sort of like the challenges that come with like basically being like you have to pay the company that makes the game to get the training, and there's like so much that goes into that, and so it's great to actually be like, no, this is like for your job also. Like this is part of the basically part of your investment as a store owner in your people, which is really important.
Sorry, I was going to say, and they get compensated in more than cards.
Yes, exactly. They deserve much more than just cards. Well, speaking of Magic the Gathering, I think, this is actually how I became aware of this story, because I also play. Some of our listeners are aware, some of them are not, that I play a ton of Magic the Gathering. This is like my main thing that I do aside from politics. So this story became really interesting to me, not just because, I spend a lot of time in local game stores here in the Bay Area, but also because the work that you are all able to do with the Tabletop Solidarity Committee has a lot to do with the Magic format that I play a ton, which is Cube. In the Magic the Gathering community, we joke a lot about how the real Magic is the Gathering. And I think that that's like especially true for Cube players and Cube designers. And I'm really interested to know, as somebody who cares about both progressive politics, left-wing politics, and Magic the Gathering, like, how have your organizing and gaming worlds intersected in the past, and like how did this come together for each of you as both organizers and gamers?
For me, starting out, I had moved to New York relatively recently, and I think Magic is great when you're moving to a place of, you can always find the community there, and immediately, you've already found people with common interests. You can start talking. I think classically, when you're playing Magic, it's just so common to you just strike up conversation as you start, and like, oh, what are the, like, oh, maybe you're playing draft, or there's many formats to Magic, but you ask, oh, like, which ways do you play the game? Essentially, do you usually come to the store? Like, what are the other stores you know about? Things like that. And it's just like immediate way to just join a community in a place. And then I'd actually was getting involved with New York City DSA at the time as well, and they had put on a couple of Magic nights there. And I found out through one of the members there about, there's this group that's putting on this big Magic event. So I went to that. That was, I think, the first event that TSA put on. And then I was like, oh, I want to get more involved.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar like trajectory to getting involved with TSC. I think, to answer like sort of the other half of the question, I think like organizing and games, it's like people who organize game nights are organizers, even if they're not organizing things politically. It's like anybody who's been an organizer and had to like try to get 15 people to a meeting, or like 8 people to a meeting, 4 people to a meeting at the same time when everyone's an adult, how hard it is. And I've been doing that since I was like a kid. I was always the one who hosted game nights, and I was not like, I was like 10 years old. I didn't have progressive politics like that stood out to me in any way. But as soon as I like started organizing in undergrad, it really like became clear that, being able to bring people into a room and to talk to people and all these things, inviting people in, is really important to like progressive politics. That's how we can like enact change, is by having people come and listen and talk to us. So yeah, I got involved in TSC very similarly to Sam. A friend who is a DSA member invited me, said, hey, there's this Magic night. It's being put on to support like a new union for game stores in the city. I was like, I'm there, sold immediately. There was a like sign up sheet, because they wanted to track attendance. And then one of the columns was just, do you want to get more involved with helping organize? And Sam and I both obviously filled out that column and then stayed involved after that. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I also think that a piece of this is the sort of unique relationship that game stores have with their customers, right? That like there is something about having a place that you go to with that sort of frequency and spend that kind of time there. Like I feel like for people who do not frequent local game stores, like it's a little hard for me to describe the sort of like how it becomes sort of like part of your emotional landscape of like your week or your month or whatever. I'm curious about that sort of like, if there's something that you think that's important, like unique about the relationship between game store workers in particular, and then you all as customers who are also players, that made the Tabletop Solidarity Committee work so well. And if there's like lessons there that you think are portable to other industries, other businesses, especially like knowing that some of the biggest strikes that are happening right now are also, essentially service industry folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll take the first stab at that. I have thought about that so much. Like something that I think is really interesting about the Brooklyn Strategist, which is of the 5 stores, the one that I go to regularly, like many of the people who work there went there growing up. Like they were a part of the after school
Mm-hmm.
program. They're people who play these games and who know people in the community. Like these are people from Brooklyn who like they walk into the store and they know like everyone who's there. And if you're new, you meet the worker at the front desk and they're nice to you, and then they introduce you to the people that you're going to go play with. Like of course, like they know their work really well, but they're also really connected. They're really like a part of the community. And in terms of like porting it over to other businesses like or other industries, like that's a harder question that I would need to think more about. But it's just like when you're deeply embedded in a community, when you have like this third space that you go to once or even twice a week, you're going to meet people and know them. And if it's a worker and you're a customer, you're going to see them every week at the same time and ask. I mean, I hope that you're asking how they're doing and talking to them like a real human being. And then, yeah, like, you'll hear about the things that aren't working at the workplace too. I mean, I still play Magic with some of the people who are workers at these stores who I met through this campaign, and other Solidarity Committee members who I never would have met really unless I was organizing with them. So I think that's like awesome. It's about staying connected to people. Yeah.
And I guess to add on to that too, I think because it's these game stores are a place you spend so much of your time. A lot of the workers' pain points are also your pain points. It's like
Sure.
if the AC isn't working at a store, like as a player, you want it to be fixed too. And if the store is understaffed, that's going to be a bad experience for you too. That's going to affect how you spend your time there. And I think again, like also so many of the people that work at those stores are also playing the same games that you are, and because like they often become your friends, it's not just like, oh, I want the workers at the store I go to be paid more. It's I want my friend to get a raise too, so it's easier to like start fighting for them.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. So knowing that both of you came in basically like through DSA, I'm also curious about like what other customers' response to the unionization drive was like, and if like there was a role that TSC played in basically organizing some of those other customers and doing political education about why this was important, and
Mhm.
what that was like.
Definitely. I mean, it was in New York City, so people were generally pro-union, generally left-leaning. There were a bunch of DSA members who were regular customers, obviously from what we've said already, but it was really important. Like, a lot of people who are into Magic, for example, like this is an expensive game. There are a lot of people who have never been a part of the union because they work at, companies that don't have unions because they're getting paid a lot or otherwise. And I think it was important to like explain like it's not just like the simple, oh yeah, like vaguely I support a union. Vaguely I think it's good that these
Mm.
workers get what they want. It's like, no, there are concrete things that are wrong. Like there's things that's not working. There are things that aren't working for the employees. And if you extrapolate it, you're seeing how it's not working for you as a customer as well. And I mean, in terms of turning out people who aren't like leftists and DSA people to these events, that was like a huge part of our work. Is like you go to a Magic night and you flyer every person who walks through the door. Sam was describing how you start a conversation when you're playing a game of Magic with somebody. You just like trapped somebody in a one-on-one, organizing one-on-one with you. It's like you like they can't say no when you like, or well, they can say no. Of course, it's important that you ask that they're okay with the conversation, but you can talk to them about the union. You can make sure that they understand what's at stake and why it's important, and who you're looking after. And there were definitely a lot of things spread by the owners as well. That's like, oh, like we're a small business, we can't
Sure.
afford for our workers to unionize. All these like classic like small business talking points or anti-union talking points at any industry or in any scale. And yeah, a lot of like inoculation had to happen in one-on-ones with customers as well as within the union. I mean, yeah, Sam and I would not be having one-on-ones with union members, but we could talk to a lot of customers if we went to a single Magic night and then get them to come to an event where they get inoculated even further, and then tell them to tell their friends, and it spread really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I really like just like thinking about using those sort of like moments of downtime in between games as you're like shuffling up to play, like as opportunities to like invite people in, which is really
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah, and I think for some of the like the big Magic Night events, it was also there were definitely people who just showed up because they saw, oh, there's like a free place to play
Sure.
Cube or to play Commander, and they hadn't even like really thought about it. So it was definitely like for those, definitely having a captive audience
Yeah,
of people who are
yeah.
like waiting to play. But it's like, first we're going to talk about the union. First we're going to do inoculation. These are things you might hear from the owners. Here's why they're wrong, stuff like that. People who are looking for an opportunity to play are going to like look for these free events, and it's also a great time to just talk to them.
Yeah, for context, you have to pay to play at any of these stores. That's not true across the country. In New York, real estate is premium, but also like this is happening more and more in more cities across the country where you have to pay like $8, 10, $12 to play for a single evening. So if we say, hey, come play Magic for free at this other location, all the same staff are going to be there. We're going to have like these cool cubes, which we haven't really described, but they are like they can be like really unique like gameplay experiences that most people don't get to try if they're just playing like quote unquote normal Magic all the time. And yeah, you can get a captive audience and ask them to do an action or inoculate them. Like we had everybody just like review 5-star review all the stores, but mention in your review the union. It's like, my 5-star review is because of the union and I like supporting union workers. And then the owners obviously see when, suddenly 50 to 100 reviews come in the same night. And I mean, they got really upset that we were like stealing business from them by hosting these
Oh, I'm sure they
events.
were.
And then, like, of course, we had union members who were there taking a photograph of a completely full store. Like, they didn't lose any business. It's like the store's completely full. They still like made a bunch of money that night. It's not like it was crickets in there either. So I think the events and like pulling those together were really rewarding because you like get a bunch of people in the room that didn't know about the union, and we did all this flyering, we did all this turnout, and then you like put on like a great event where people have a lot of fun, and you also like bring them on board with the union and understanding why it's important.
Yeah, I feel like that sounds like a really good sort of like first organizing experience for a lot of people too. That's like, oh, like I have a shared stake in this. I'm going to have fun with people that I enjoy being around, and I'm going to learn why like supporting worker organizing is so important, which just it seems like in some ways like a really ideal scenario for kind of like organizing people into the set of politics, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the events that you threw. I know that, we've been talking a little bit about game nights, like having like space and time to play with people and talk about the politics. And I know that you were also part of organizing basically a strike fund as part of supporting the union's negotiations. Yeah, could you talk a little bit about some of the events you were able to organize and the impact they had on the union's effectiveness?
Yeah, so I think those game night events were, as we mentioned, like they had actions involved, they had inoculation involved, but it was also like oftentimes a place for us to get contact information for everyone because we had like a huge, a text list where we would send out updates about the union. Also, while everyone was there at the event, we would give updates, get people connected to the various networks, and then also help spread the strike fund as well. So we had the strike fund, and we also had this pledge, essentially where people would put their names down of saying like if it should happen that the store starts striking in preparation for their contract negotiation, that you would essentially agree to boycott the store until it progressed. And then there were a number of other events too. There was a pack the store event we helped put on, where essentially we got everyone to wear because union's colors are orange, so we had like everyone wearing orange. We had some like orange shirts that we gave out, and one of the stores in kind of like downtown Manhattan, we packed a bunch of people into there, and then we had workers there giving speeches. They kind of stopped play for that time. There were people who were otherwise customers who didn't know about it, but then heard about the experiences of workers there. So that was a big event. Gabor, if you want to talk about some more.
Sure. Yeah, we would host a lot of these the game nights. I think like for the time scale, we mentioned this like 2023 to 2025, maybe about 18 months from start to finish. And like for all of 2024, we were running these game nights, maybe monthly to once every 2 months, just like consistently making space for people to get plugged in, to hear more about it, and then flyering basically as much as we could. And the flyering, I think, was really important too, because you're showing up at the store where a person might not hear about it and you tell them, hey, there's this event next week. And then also flyering parents when they come pick up their kids, because they're also like really important customers at the stores. And then the event that like I worked a lot on right at the tail end when we were really pushing hard for the strike fund was like a big live stream and huge like fundraiser for the strike fund. It was again like around Cube, which is this sort of like niche format, but it was with a design project from in this like small niche, like a famous person in this small niche. He like designed this play experience that like sort of went viral in the Magic community, and so then this live stream got like a larger amount of traction than it would otherwise for this format, and raised like thousands and thousands of dollars. I think it was like in the $4,000 to $5,000 range, and it was a lot of work. Me and another organizer were both unemployed at the time and basically did it as like a full-time job, but it was like so rewarding, and just like it was awesome to like see the end product, to like see all the people that heard about it that didn't even know who I was, but heard about it from other things, and then we're donating money to support the union. And then, I mean, having a huge strike fund that is public is like a very good bargaining tool, because you're showing to the owners like, hey, we can go on strike for a really long time. Like, the workers are all going to get paid 100% of their wages, and you're going to be out of business. Like, do you really want to fight us on this? And yeah, I think that was a big part of us winning.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that the who like curated this list of cards is also somebody who has like a like niche media following, is like, that's such a cool sort of like synergy between this like niche hobby community, people who care about organized labor and leftist politics, and like, I don't know, just like what a neat way of sort of combining these interests and creating an opportunity for people to show their solidarity.
Yeah, I mean, Cube as a format is slightly less like directly plugged into what like Hasbro is trying to sell from for Magic the Gathering, and so I think it tends to attract people with politics that are slightly like anti-establishment, or like, I
Yeah.
don't really want to like pay like for product every week and like continue to acquire product from this corporation all the time. Like, cubes by design are replayable without acquiring new cards. That's like the whole pitch. And so then it was like an audience that was really receptive to, hey, we're doing a big fundraiser for a union. It's like, okay, well, we're all pro-union, like, or almost all of us are pro-union. And yeah, like getting a person to bring their design project from Baltimore to New York, it was like not a difficult pitch. He was like very on board from the beginning, which was awesome. It was also like he spent a bunch of time preparing like materials for this stream, because he's also like a graphic designer,
Yeah.
as his day job. So it was like, so much like awesome volunteer time from people who were just really committed to helping the union win, which is, always super exciting to see.
So, since the union won their contract in 2025, looking back, what are some of the lessons that you've learned and kind of carried forward in other organizing projects you've been involved in since then?
I think that like, setting up meetings, setting up spaces where people feel welcome, and to both provide like the inoculation, and doing these one-on-ones to turn out to meetings is like a very long-standing labor organizing and other organizing like tradition. And I think there were so many lessons learned on like, how do you like get a person in the door who's like a little bit anti, or a person in the door who is pro but maybe just needs to get pushed over the edge. Like, I mean, it's so much good one-on-one training, which is so important to being a good organizer. And like in the Jane McAlevey model of like, how do you have like an effective organizing one-on-one, that was definitely something I learned a lot about. And how to host like good events is something that's obviously important to organizing, but transferable basically anywhere. It's like, how do you host an event that like gets to the crux of what you're really trying to accomplish, but also like is exciting to show up to, and that people are going to go invite their friends to, not like, that you just have to do all the one-on-one over and over again, because it sounds like it's going to be a slog. It's like, if you make it sound like it's going to be really fun and exciting, which is like uniquely easy to do with games, then you can turn out a lot more people that way and get a lot more people plugged in.
Again, like you and Gabor have kind of been saying, is that like it was just a nice controlled environment to start getting experience with particular areas. For me, it was also I did a lot of the flyering, and a lot of that felt like a kind of like a controlled environment for canvassing, where you are just approaching strangers, talking to them, but it's already you already know they have an interest in games, as they're going and coming out of the store, and then also when you are addressing their questions, right? It's you don't have to get heady with policies. It's okay, I've been to the game store before. I know what I want out of this. I know what you probably want out of this. So getting experience with identifying that, and talking to people about that. And I think also a lot of that with I think any organizing entity also has to be super involved with putting together that text list. And then from there, it was also, the idea of, identifying the people who are more interested and, working them towards being a more active organizer, getting to the center of the target. So I think there's a lot of experience with that. And then, finding some people you realize, okay, they're really interested in this area, and someone's maybe more interested in tabletop than the rest of us are. And let's figure out how to get that energized, right? That these different areas, and get more people involved with that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about having learned about this story. I really I think the insight about how you build a solidarity committee around some what feels like a very niche interest, but that actually brings the union's fight to the forefront for a lot more people is something that I think is really worth looking at and learning something from. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about the work that you were able to do with the Solidarity Committee?
Yeah. I think just in response to what you said at the end there, it's the way that I put it to describe to people oh, why are you a volunteer supporting this small union? What are you doing to how does that actually help you win? It wasn't people who were anti-union, but people who were what are you actually doing? I think it was really easy to describe as you, as a person who doesn't play a lot of games, show up to a game store and you buy one game and you leave and you don't come back for the rest of the year until next Christmas when you need a different game for your kid or something, right? But that's not how the game store stays open. The game store stays open because there's 500 to 1,000 people who come through their doors every week. And this is true for gyms. This is true for, baristas and coffee shops. This is true for many retail stores. Some retail locations do genuinely stay open just off of tourists and stuff like that. But most places stay open because they have a dedicated customer base. And if you organize the dedicated customer base into a strike pledge, they're ready to boycott, they're inoculated, they're ready to show up, they're on the picket line. The picket line was full. The picket line had more people on it than the inside of the store when they were open, because the managers kept the store open. And yeah, that's how you win. It's you just have so much pressure that the owners can't deny it. And I think using that lens to describe it to people who were on board but didn't understand this particular context was really helpful. It's the store is open because these Magic players, they come, each of them spends $25 at the store every week, 52 weeks a year for years on end. So if you want to win a five-year contract, you're threatening this much money from this customer. It's math. It's just simple math. And there's a lot of game stores in New York City, these customers could go anywhere else. So are you going to let them go, or are you going to sign on to this contract? And that was the question we asked the owners, and they were pressured into signing a contract that was really good for the workers, of course. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that insight too feels really important to just all of us in our daily lives, that there are places where we are regulars, and that the relationship with the workers at those places that we're regulars is an opportunity to really live out our politics in particular ways. Well, Gabor and Sam, thank you so much again for making the time. It was great to chat, learn more about your experiences, and I hope that next time I'm in New York, maybe we get to play some Cube.
Yes, I'd love that. Thanks so much for having me.
This show is published by Convergence, a magazine for radical insights. I'm Caden Mock, and our producer is Josh Elstro. Editorial assistance provided this week by Akin Allah. Kimmy David designed our cover art. Convergence Magazine is a proud founding member of the Movement Media Alliance. And of course, if you like what you heard, please let us know. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes, tell a friend, and rate and review the show wherever you listen. I'd love to reach a review. If you'd like to support the work that we do at Convergence, bringing our movements together to strategize, struggle, and win in this crucial historical moment, you can become a member at convergencemag.com/donate. Even a few bucks a month goes a long way to making sure our independent small team can continue to build a map for our movements. And I hope this helps.